Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Gina, and in today's video we're going to be moving on to something within the Addams family mansion. So this has been a build, it's probably one that I kicked off very early on in getting into miniatures and getting into doll houses. It was just an easy inspiration because who doesn't love the Addams family, to be honest. This is all made out of mat board and cardboard, so it is tend to be a little bit more warpy. I'm not too sure if that's even a word, but anyway, it doesn't like to stay straight, so I'm sort of trying to move more into wooden structures so that it's got a little bit more flexibility with them. So we're going to be moving on to this little room here, and I'm going to turn that little guy in the back there into which is actually just a small wooden drawing figure, and I'm going to turn him into a knight. I was going to say knight in shining armor, but I don't think the armor is going to be that shiny. I don't actually know yet. So I'm currently in that position where I am wanting to do the project. I've got a picture in my head how I think it's going to turn out. I've got a rough plan to go about doing it, but I'm equally as nervous because I don't know if this is going to work. I've got no idea if this is going to work, and maybe it won't. So yeah, I've basically been procrastinating all morning. I've been moving the light, which is just above my head. I've been moving that up. I have been taking videos of the rain because it's raining this morning. And it's now sort of mid-morning, so I just need to get on and start this project just to see if I can actually pull it together, if it's going to look like a knight or not. So yeah, let's get started and see how this actually pans out. Are you trying to help? Okay, so to begin with and to kick off this project, all I'm going to do is start by creating some patterns. I'm going to create this out of photocopy paper because it's quite malleable and easy to kind of cut and mold to the little mannequin there. And I'm just going to work my way through sort of creating some shapes that I think will probably work, and then testing them on the model, and then just making small changes along the way. So it's coming along quite well. I'm pretty pleased with the progress so far. I have actually just created the pattern out of paper, which is just photocopy paper. So it's quite thin and it's quite malleable, but it's going to be a bit different once I sort of transfer that over onto cardstock, which I've painted black already. So when I put the metallic finish on the top, the black underneath will just give it that depth. So I'm just going to transfer all of this work over onto the cardstock and see how we go from there. So this is when it all starts to come together, or not. So we'll wait and see. So once I've cut out all of the pattern pieces onto the cardstock, I'm just going to put a couple of layers or a couple of coats of the silver over the top of the black. To to add some details to the armour and just around some of the edges, I'm just going to use this silver pen, which is just a little bit brighter than the silver paint, and then highlight that with some fine black pen. So now it's time to put it all together. I'm just going to start by gluing some of the pieces together that sort of fall underneath each other. So that's on the very front piece, or the chest piece, as well as some of the side pieces that go around the hips. I'm not really too sure what they're called. I probably should find out what they're called. And also just wanting to put together and shape out anything that I can before I attach it to the model, and then really shape out the look of the armour. So before I go ahead and start attaching it to the little mannequin, little model, I'm just going to go through and paint out any areas that might be seen with any gaps in the armour. I just want to make sure that they kind of disappear and are not seen too much. And then I'm just going to go through and put together all the armour. It's a little bit repetitive because obviously there's 2 arms or 2 legs, etc, etc. So just sit back and enjoy as we kind of go through this little bit of a montage. Okay, so it's the next morning, and this is where we got up to yesterday, and okay, I'm reasonably happy with parts of it, but not necessarily all of it. I kind of kept on looking at this last night and thinking it looked more like RoboCop than an actual knight in shining armour, so to speak. I know I've still got the helmet to go, and I'm going to do that today, but I am actually going to make a couple of changes to this to actually make it look a little bit more like a knight. First thing I don't really like is the fact that his arms are dead straight. So I'm thinking I will take this apart just a little bit. The shoulders are fine. I actually quite like the shoulders, but I actually want him to have his arms come around and have a sword in front of him. I may even make a shield, but just to really kind of give that look of a knight. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to do anything with his legs. The legs would probably be quite straight, and it's a bit flat, which is probably why it looks a bit like RoboCop. So let's take this apart a little bit, see how we can add a little bit more detail to him. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to just take this apart just a little bit. I'm just going to bend his arms. One thing I was really hoping for is that he would be able to bend his arms and they would hold in position, but they are actually all sprung loaded, which is not ideal. And so what I'm just going to do is sort of try and bend them around a little bit and put a sort of a clasp in place and just see if that will hold them there for a little bit of time, just so that I can yeah, just so that they can kind of give me the look that I'm after. So moving on to creating his helmet, I'm just going to do the same steps as what I've done for all of the armour. I'm just going to create a bit of a pattern out of the photocopy paper, and I'm just going to start with that front plate of the mask, because that's actually got the most amount of detail, and it's going to create the real illusion that it's actually a helmet. So I'm just going to work through that, put it onto the photocopy paper, and then transfer that over onto the cardstock. Luckily I've painted out a bit of cardstock in silver, so I didn't need to cut it out in black and then paint it with silver, so I was pretty lucky there. So moving on to a sword, I'm just going to create this actually out of foam board. I'll just cut the top layer of the foam board away, so just that paper layer away, so I'm just left with the foam board. And the reason why I was wanting to do this is because it will give me the ability to sculpt it. And I was hoping to get some handles and other bits and pieces out of it, but it kind of just broke away, so I just cut them away anyway. So I'm just going to sharpen the point a little bit and then just use my X-Acto blade just to create a bit of a blade. It doesn't have to be perfect, just to kind of definitely give the illusion that it's a sword. Moving back to creating the helmet, what I've done here is I've created two side pieces that are roughly the sort of the shape of the head, and then I'm just going to cut this strip down the middle and then cut sort of a whole lot of different sort of slots in the side to wrap it around, and then glue the two sides of the helmet in onto that centerpiece. Moving on back to the sword, I'm just going to use this piece of dowel, which is about 3mm in diameter, and I'm just going to cut two pieces to length. One will be the cross piece for the sword, and then one will be the handle. So once that's all glued into place and dried, I'm just going to give it a coat of black paint. And then while I've got the black out and I'm just going to mix up a little bit of silver, I'm just going to go through and put some shadows in where the armour is. And this is going to help give the armour a bit of definition. It's going to help make things pop and hopefully not make him look so much like RoboCop. And then I just sort of go backwards and forwards between the sword and obviously the helmet here and the armour as well, just to try and bring out those shadows and lowlights as well as some highlights also. And then just to add a little bit more detail, hello Loki, I'm just going to add some cotton thread around the handle of the sword, just to kind of give it a little bit more texture, rather than it just being the wood. And oh god, he was just such a nightmare, but a lot of fun too. So my little QA person in place there. And then just to finish the sword off, I just added some couple of beads that I had in stock just on the edge of the crosspiece and at the top of the handle of the sword. I was going to say hilt of the sword. Anyway, moving on to the shield. I wasn't going to do a shield, and the more I looked at it, the more I kind of went, yeah, it definitely needs one. So I've just cut an image out from my Cricut. It was just in the design studio. It was just a free printable, and just cut that out of the cardstock, and then just glued a couple of layers on and just bent that cardstock around ever so slightly, just following exactly the same process as I've done for all of the rest of it. covered it with a couple of coats of the silver, and then put some highlights and lowlights in it with shadows, which helps it all kind of pop and give it some texture. And I've just done that same with the sword. Now it's time to glue it all together and see if we can put him into some sort of pose, now that we know that his arms don't really bend. Well, they bend, but they just spring back into place, which is not ideal. So yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue in place for the sword, as well as the shield, and just see if it all kind of comes together. And he's done, and I'm really stoked with how he's turned out. Just adding in those additional details with the sword and the helmet and the shield, as well as adding more of the highlights and lowlights as far as the shading goes to accentuate the definition of the armor, has really made a difference, considering where I started off this morning, where she looked more like RoboCop. Really pleased with actually how it's turned out in the end. So yeah, if you've liked this video, consider hitting that subscribe button. So we're going to get on to the reveal and have a look how he's turned out, and also I've put some additional links in there for some other videos that I think that you might like. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.